Welcome to Veronica Live, and we are here. He's been back on Veronica Live before, and we are so happy to host him. It's Asheesh Agar. Oh my gosh, I screwed it up already.
Agarwal, you were so close.
I was so close. And you are an American Edge Project advisor. And we have so much to talk about, Asheesh, because, people don't realize how important the internet world and all of that is. And, we're going to talk China and Russia and everything. But first, I want you to tell folks that can't, that haven't heard you in a while, what exactly is the American Edge Project and what you all do that's so important for us?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on The American Edge Project. It's a consortium of technology companies and trade groups whose mission is to really educate policymakers about the importance of technology to America's future. So to our national security, and of course we're going to talk about China, as well as our prosperity and our values. I mean, you put your finger on it. The internet. Things like artificial intelligence really are the key to the future, and it's important that policymakers understand that.
Well, and to talk about kind of how things impacted us recently, I want you to chat about that CrowdStrike debacle, because that just, airplanes couldn't fly, banks couldn't do their business, and I think it even impacted hospitals. So talk about how that impacted normal humans every day.
Well, you're right about that. I mean, it shut down. I mean, I think Delta Airlines and many airlines, for days on end. And CrowdStrike is just a perfect example of where regulation can really end up, overregulation can end up, harming businesses and consumers. So we don't know the exact story about what happens, but Microsoft has said that the reason the CrowdStrike, debacle happened was because European regulators required them to allow third-party companies to, easily access their source code without some of the controls in place that they would like. And as a result, this, third-party contractor that did business with Microsoft was able to access their source code. That company admits that they made a mistake, and as a result, that error spread really around the globe and caused, probably hundreds of billions of dollars in damage.
I mean, it was literally shocking, because I flew to Europe a few days after the CrowdStrike, attack, you could say, internal attack happened, and it was still impacting Delta Airlines. But one of the things, because this whole subject scares me. I am an internet addict, but the whole working of it and who's in charge of it, we don't understand that. And you mentioned about Europe, and so, I was reading up about the Digital Market Acts that Europe has. So explain what that is, because we don't have that, I guess, in America, and we don't want that, was my understanding. Did I research that correctly?
You are just 100% spot on. So the Digital Markets Act came into effect this spring in Europe, and what it does is it imposes all sorts of requirements on almost exclusively American companies. So they created this concept called gatekeepers. So basically, big American technology companies were going to be and are now subject to all of these new requirements, where they have to make their data accessible to competitors. There are limits on what they do to compete. And just since this spring, European regulators have imposed literally tens of billions of dollars of fines on American companies. That's basically a wealth transfer from American shareholders and American workers to European bureaucrats. And it's a very onerous regulation that does limit how our companies can compete. Shockingly enough, those rules don't apply to European companies or Chinese companies, because by and large they're not large enough to be subject to those rules. So we absolutely don't want that style of regulation here at home.
So in America, I feel like I'm so free on the internet. And when I was traveling in Europe, I was in the UK, and one of my friends is running for Congress, so I was trying to listen to her debate. And I wasn't able to listen to it through a normal app, that I get radio stations. So I had to backdoor it through another app. And then also, I was trying to listen to CNN, and I couldn't just listen to CNN. I had to go to my XM app. I mean, I'm just paying up the wazing for all these apps to listen to CNN. And so I'm in the UK going, this is blocked. And I was like, what the heck? And those are some of the words that researching for you to come on. Censorship is huge. So, and then of course we've got Brazil now that won't let, if you're an X user, which I've become an addict the last 5 months, you can't go and just do stuff on X. So talk about the censorship that's happening now too.
Well, it really is remarkable. Thank God we live in the United States of America where we have a First Amendment and this commitment to free speech. Other parts of the world, even our friends in Europe and the United Kingdom, aren't exactly like that. You may have seen.
I was living it.
Right. Wasn't it just last week where former President Trump did an interview with Elon Musk on X?
Yes.
And so European regulators sent like a quote unquote warning letter to Elon Musk saying
that.
Can you believe that? Who do these folks think they are? Now, look, luckily, I think those regulators are a little bit isolated even within Europe. I mean, poll after poll shows that European citizens, they get the importance of free speech and open trade, and they recognize the risks of China. But you put these unelected bureaucrats in charge, who knows what's going to happen?
Which I want to say, you did work for Trump previously. So can you talk about that? Because we have an election going on. And that was one of my questions I wanted to ask you. In your business with American Edge Project, do you think one administration versus the other, does it weigh in, or we're pretty fair and square no matter who the administration is?
So yeah, I was honored to work in the Trump administration, and in the 2020 cycle, I was able to be a surrogate for his campaign on some debates and things, and that was a lot of fun. And I do give former President Trump just tons of credit. I think he was probably the first president in this century to really spotlight the risks that the Chinese Communist Party has to our country and the West generally, and he really did do a good job of rallying Western governments to meet that challenge. I do give the Biden administration some credit. I think they have made some good moves. Like, for example, they've limited the export of very sensitive, the most advanced technology to Chinese companies. I think that's great. They have encouraged other parts of the world to stop using Chinese telecommunications equipment that could be susceptible to hacks and things. So I think the Biden administration has done some good things. On a going forward basis, I'm reasonably confident that a second Trump administration would continue to adopt those those free market policies, right? Light touch regulation, supporting American companies abroad. I know it's pretty early for the Harris campaign, but she comes from from California, and obviously the tech industry is very important out there. So fingers crossed that she'll adopt a similar line.
Right. Well, and I want to get into, you all just released a story that AEP, America Edge Project, unveils comprehensive economic policy framework to secure U.S. innovation leadership. And then when you're reading the article, which is wonderful, I want to talk about the pillars, but there's also a link to the executive summary. And there's kind of like these poll quote blocks in there, and because I want to get into China, because China's, I guess, is our number one threat, and like this stat in one of the factoids, they outnumber us by 50-1 when it comes to hackers. So for one of our hackers, they've got 50 dudes or dudettes over there trying to hack us. And so is China really our number one threat?
Well, I think you have to say so. Look, the FBI director has said that China's industrial espionage hacking efforts are more than any other, like all the other countries in the world put together. China devotes more resources to it. They're stealing something on the order of $500 billion annually in intellectual property from the U.S. and around the world. So look, I mean, if you know your Chinese history, they're really big on 5-year plans, great leap forward and everything else. Well, look, they've said very publicly that they want to supplant the U.S. as a world leader in artificial intelligence by 2030, and they've said they plan to quote unquote own us by 2035. I mean, they very much want a Chinese Communist Party oriented world axis where kind of they set the values for the globe, and you've already seen they're allying with Russia and Iran and North Korea and others to try to make that happen.
Well, and one of the factoids in there too was Russia, it says, is near the top of the FBI hacker list, but they like to do, I guess, hack into our U.S. energy sector. So talk about what that means.
Oh, yes. I mean, both the Russians and the Chinese. I mean, there are, many examples where they have been able to infiltrate into basically the U.S. Infrastructure computer systems with, the risk of, possibly shutting them down or making them dangerous for people. Look, and this, I'm sure you're living in Florida. You've seen this. I mean, you remember the spy balloon. You've read about, the Chinese spy base that's operating out of Cuba, 90 miles off the shore of Florida.
Right.
They've in New York. Like, we literally had to shut down a Chinese police station in New York. That's what they called it. It was these Chinese sympathizers who were basically harassing dissidents, here in the United States.
Yeah.
So the risk is very real.
That was insane. Well, so some of the pillars that I know you're an expert on, Asheesh, and you can explain them to us. The first pillar is establishing geopolitical leadership through technical innovation. So what does that mean to the normal person?
Well, what it means is that we need to stay, one step or ideally a couple of steps ahead of our rivals. So, look, artificial intelligence by itself. Let's set aside, quantum computing and 6G and all these other things. By itself, it is estimated that artificial intelligence is going to add something like $27 trillion to the world economy in the next decade. Well, if the Chinese, the Chinese Communist Party, and of course every company in China has links there. If they are able to take the lead over us, the best materials and manufacturing processes and medicines could be coming out of China rather than the United States and our allies. If that happens, China could set the rules of the road for decades to come.
Well, that is very scary. And along that lines, who's like sprinting with us? Do we have any allies? Is India? I don't know if the UK is, because like I said, I couldn't even listen to a show through normal channels. Who are the good guys with us? Asheesh, is there anyone?
Well, like I say, by and large, it's the Western democracies, right? It's Europe, the UK, India certainly being right next door to China, Australia, and we definitely don't love everything that Europe, is doing. They're a little too protectionist, but
right.
I think all of these places are starting to recognize the risks of China, and really what we need to do is just come together, collaborate more. We had Microsoft recently, invest heavily in a French AI company. That's great that the French are also investing in that too. Well, what did the European regulators do? They came down and they announced that they were going to investigate it because they were concerned that Microsoft might, take over this French company rather than saying, hey, it's a great thing that Microsoft is now, working hand in hand with this French company.
So the second pillar in the article was, and maybe this is along the Microsoft thing, is promoting. I can't even say that word. Is it dynamism? I can't even say it in the text. How do I say
You got it that time.
Oh my gosh.
You got it that time.
Okay, good. In the tech sector, so is that this partnership with Microsoft and all the other big tech people, I guess?
It's very much along those lines. So, actually, so where is the innovation coming from? Where is the investment coming? Well, it's really coming from, venture capital and from our largest tech companies. It's not just the companies themselves. What they are able to do is to fund a whole startup ecosystem. So, you think about, Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniacki in their garage. Well, those guys, this generations of those guys, they're getting their funding from Google, Meta, Microsoft, Amazon. And what a lot of our policymakers and, quite frankly, the kind of the anti-business left is wanting to do is to punish our biggest companies and make it harder for them to invest in small startups. OpenAI, OpenAI and ChatGPT, they got a lot of their seed money from Elon Musk, from Microsoft, and there are people on the left and probably some of the populist right too who are wanting to shut down that ecosystem, and it really would hamstring our economy.
Well, and mentioned in this second pillar is I guess you guys cyber, to protect against cyber attacks. So I think you need me to start a little startup. I'll hire the 49 the cyber hackers to work on our side to compete with the 50 of the Japanese. So I think, Asheesh, we could start our own little startup right here.
And you know what? We'll raise $500 million for it, and in a couple of years we'll both retire. How about that?
Well, I'm the queen of PR, so I think we can work together on this one. So, okay, well, because cyber attacks are huge. I mean, we've had where, hospital systems have been taken ransom. They can't even access patient files. I mean, it's scary out there because we are so digital, Asheesh. Okay, let's talk about the third pillar, and then I'll go back to cyber attacks with you. Sharing the benefits of the innovation economy was the third pillar. I guess you're trying to keep it low cost, because when I was reading about that Digital Markets Act, I guess in Europe they've got companies. Did I read it right? Because this happened to me recently. I was trying to book a hotel. And I thought I was on the hotel website, but it was actually like a third market person, and that seems to be part of what Europe was pushing. Did I get that right? And then I was mad because the hotel ended up being like $50 more through this. This I thought it was the hotel website, but it wasn't. And and I actually called and got my money back because I was so ticked. So.
Oh, that's funny. Well, they're two slightly different things. So what you're talking about in Europe is another example of the Digital Markets Act. And with these new rules they put in place, they've made it much harder for just regular customers to find, a hotel online, to go to, Google Maps or whatever your preferred, mapping service is, because they have all these rules about how you have to make it fair for all these companies, rather than just letting the consumer pick, kind of what they want, what makes sense for them. Now, what we're talking about in that third pillar about, sharing the benefits of tech writ large, it's really making sure that people understand that tech supports really, the whole country and economies every place. So in Florida alone, tech jobs support I think the number is 530,000 people in Florida are employed in the tech sector. It adds something like $85 billion to Florida's economy. And you have these tech innovation centers that are spread all around the country now. It's not just Silicon Valley. It's Columbus, Ohio. It's Charlotte, North Carolina. It's Miami. It's there's some in Indianapolis. It's really spread all around the country and really to all elements. The rising tide lifts all boats, right? I mean, there are people, and I've met people who, they just have high school degrees, but they're making six-digit jobs, in cybersecurity because there is such demand. And if you're ambitious and you're willing to learn something, you can go make a great life for yourself and your family, learning some of these new skills.
So when it comes to Europe, because it seemed like in Europe, for some of these things that you were searching for, you have to pay fees to get the information, and we don't really do that. Is that correct?
That's exactly right. So one of the things that European regulators don't seem to like is that you can get stuff at no cost to you online. So, for example, they're hammering Meta for this. Oh gosh, you collect people's information when they go and use Facebook, right? I think everybody understands that, right? I mean, it's Meta, Google, these companies, they make money through advertising. That's how they're able to provide you these services at no out-of-pocket cost. I think everybody's generally okay with that. The European regulators didn't like that, so Meta said, okay, fine. Well, we'll introduce a subscription model, so you can start if you don't like us collecting your data, that's fine. Well, you can pay to use Facebook. Seems reasonable as a response. Well, the Europeans don't like that either. They're like, well, you can't charge for this stuff. It's like, these are private businesses.
Well, because in America we're paying for Netflix, Apple TV, Paramount. I can't add another subscription, and I'm sure the Europeans. I would be angry if I had to pay for my Google Map or something.
Something that you've been used to getting for free, Gmail, Yahoo Mail, whatever it is, right?
Oh my gosh.
You're used to it, and I think, right, you probably maybe you've never thought about it, but you probably in the back of your mind, you're like, okay, I get it, right? They collect information on the websites that I look at, like, when I'm traveling, I'll search for pizza places near me, and so guess what? I'm used to seeing pizza ads show up on my mobile phone, and that's fine. That's how the internet works. I think people understand that.
No, Jeff Bezos knows me intimately, and I'm silly enough that I've just started paying for my little X check mark, and I went over 4.2 million feeds, and I've only been doing this a couple months, so it's actually benefiting me, that payment.
You have 4.2 million followers already.
Well,
Congratulations.
Feeds. Feeds.
Okay.
No, I'm still a baby Xer, Asheesh. But I've been,
well, that's still pretty good.
Oh yeah, they do insult you even when you're a baby Xer. But no, this is so important, and so tell me about how is American Edge Project, because you obviously have to be in D.C. in front of legislators, because as an internet addict now for years, you cannot take this away from me. So I need you with your big boxing gloves up there, putting these people, and it's a bipartisan issue, because people on the left like their internet too. So talk about what you're doing in DC to fight the fight to keep this free.
Yeah, really, it is just education. Honestly, most of what American Edge does is really around the country. You may have seen our ads where we'll just find just kind of regular small business people talking about how they use technology to help grow their businesses, and we'll run ads in swing states, or so that members see them who sit on important committees or whatnot, and just talking about the importance of technology. So American Edge Project as an organization actually doesn't lobby at all. That's not what we're about.
Okay.
There are people who do that, and good for them. That's important too. But we're really just about kind of educating people and trying to encourage them, to pay attention to how important these issues are.
Well, and in that executive summary, which I know you're so proud of me that I looked at it so intently, there's top priorities, and you guys talk about AI, and you've mentioned artificial intelligence, and the Chat GPT, which I've tried it actually, and I just tried, I guess for X, is it Grok? I don't even know how you
Grok, yeah, and there's Grok 2 now, so yeah.
Which I haven't tried that, but I tried the normal Grok the other day, just making logos for like 15 minutes. I was lost, and I don't even need a damn graphic artist anymore, and so talk about, there's so many things you all have to worry about, the 5-6G connectivity, quantum computing, cloud computing. I mean, isn't everything in the cloud these days? And all of these things to me seem hackable. Space technologies, renewable energy tech. I mean, Asheesh, you've got the world on your shoulders because we are so tech-oriented in life now.
I would say that the biggest thing that we could do as a country is, first of all, do no harm. There are so many proposals out there from folks who, who don't really have, quite frankly, a whole lot of experience working in the private sector, but who want to regulate it. And they view businesses, they take a hostile view towards businesses, and they want to make it harder for like we talked about earlier, for companies to invest in startups. They want to impose all these requirements on what companies need to do, like, you need to make your data accessible to your competitors, including Chinese competitors.
Why?
Well, the idea, I suppose, at one level, the idea is, we want to help. We want there to be more competition, and I understand
I don't want
that.
The enemy
and that is
to be ahead of me.
Well, that's exactly right. And yes, we all want there to be plenty of competition, but I think what some policymakers, especially progressives in D.C., don't understand is that when you impose artificial rules on companies, you can actually make things a lot worse. So, I mean, the first thing we're trying to do is to get people to, hey, just back off. Let's have light touch regulations like we did in the Trump administration on something like AI, which is so new. Let's take a wait and see approach and only, legislate if we see that there's an actual problem. I think a second thing that, we could do, and I'd love to see some discussion of this in the campaign, is let's stand up for U.S. economic interests abroad. I talked about some of the things that European regulators, are trying to do to American companies, basically, imposing these, multi-billion-dollar fines on them. Well, I gave the Biden administration credit earlier, and they do deserve some credit. On this one, though, I will knock them a little bit. They've been actually collaborating with European regulators to limit what U.S. companies can do. Actually, my former boss, Ted Cruz, has sent a couple of letters to the administration asking them why they're basically colluding with the Europeans to punish American companies. The Wall Street Journal has written editorials about this. The U.S. Trade Representative has flipped long-standing bipartisan positions to make it harder for U.S. companies to engage in digital trade abroad. So what I would love to see is for there to be some discussion about how we can support U.S. companies abroad, because that's really about supporting, U.S. shareholders and U.S. workers.
Well, you wrote, I guess I call it an op-ed, but I don't know. It wasn't an op-ed. It's titled "With Technology, the U.S. Looks Up to No One," and I loved it. But you kind of conclude at the end, that your last paragraph was very moving to me, because you write, as countries choose their technology paths, they should understand that Europe's regulatory approach has been marked by short-term pitfalls and long-term stagnation, whereas America's approach has consistently led to prosperity, growth, and innovation for policymakers around the globe. The choice should be clear. So is it, obviously we're doing it right because we don't have all this regulation, and how do we bring in Europe? Because they're part of our team, and like the more people that are thinking about this, I would think it would just blow up more.
Yeah, so it really started, I'd say, in about the 1980s. And if you were to kind of look at the world, kind of our living standards are probably just a little bit ahead of Europe's. Since then, we've stuck to our free market guns. Europe really hasn't. And now, the difference is phenomenal. So, United Kingdom, outside of kind of the London and kind of the immediate area of London, the rest of the United Kingdom's living standards are about what they are in they're like gross capita income. It's about what they are in Mississippi. And I have friends in Mississippi, been there, love Mississippi, but that's not, unfortunately, exactly the leading edge of the United States. Well, that's kind of where most of the United Kingdom is. I mean, by every measure of growth, investment, we're just blowing the United Kingdom out of the water. And at least some of the reason is that we have this kind of light touch, low tax regulatory regime that encourages investment. We don't shoot the winner. And, I'm hoping that, the Olympics, how'd you like that? Do you think people will be running quite as fast if they saw that, oh, wow. Hopefully they'll come along. And it would be really helpful, like I said, if the U.S. government kind of stood with the U.S. private sector to make that case.
And that was, I think you've answered my question. I wanted to ask you, what is the strategy to win the global tech race? And I guess just getting everybody to align, and come together. And then I wanted to ask you, because people forget that the internet, there's censorship and there's surveillance. Like, we were joking, because like Amazon definitely tracks me, but the Chinese might be tracking me too, Asheesh. So can you talk about that? I mean, we're so lucky to have the freeness, but our enemies are definitely watching what we're doing too.
Well, look, there have been all sorts of reports about that from certain social media sites that the Chinese, Communist Party is apparently using to gather, information on Americans. That comes, directly from, U.S. intelligence services saying that, to, what you're talking about, like hacks. I saw a report, I think last week, that, a hacking group might have received like the Social Security numbers of every single American out there.
I saw
so,
that.
Yeah, so this
Does that
stuff
mean they're
is
going to
real.
pay my taxes? Those are the questions I have. You've stolen my Social Security. What are you going to do with it?
I think you should write a letter to Xi Jinping and say, "Hey, you have my information, so yeah, let's make a trade here." But no, it's a real thing, and that just gets back to what we're talking about. I mean, cybersecurity, it takes enormous investments to stay. To stay ahead of our adversaries, and if we're punishing our private sector, where's that investment going to come from?
So what are we missing? You've got such an important mission, and you've got to win this fight, and we've got to come together with the good guys on our team. So what are we missing, Asheesh?
I would just encourage, you and and thank you for reading that executive summary. But if you're interested, go to, AmericanEdgeProject.org. Take a look. As you know, Veronica, it's written in a very, very, very bite-sized format. If you're interested in these issues, learn more about Chinese.
Understand it. Yes, because it's
right.
Words
like dynamism. Yeah. Just take a look, educate, and then just talk. When you're at your town halls and you're in the voting booth, just ask yourself which candidates are going to be who wants to support innovation, who wants to stand up for, U.S. companies, and let that influence your thinking. Let those questions influence your thinking.
Well, today it is actually our primary here in Freedom, Florida, so we are busy voting. Some of us voted early, because I always worried that the machine's going to crash, Asheesh, and my vote's not going to count, which you have to protect it for us. But, oh my goodness, such a pleasure having Asheesh, let's see if I can say her name, Agarwal?
You got it that time. Congratulations.
All right, from American Edge Project, and you can find them on .org. You guys are on Facebook, and you have your website too. So we got to have you back because you're fighting the fight, and it was excellent. Thanks for being on Veronica Live.
Thank you for having me, and I would love to come back. And good luck with primary. No hanging chads today, okay?
No. Yeah, we've got to win it. All right, thanks, Asheesh.
Bye.
We'll be right back on Veronica Live.